Welcome everyone to another Plugged In right here on Music Gateway, where we talk to artists from the Sync catalogue. I'm Kamilla Rose, and today I'm joined by Osamu Kitajima, Japanese musician, producer, composer, and his career spans over 40 years. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Do you want to kind of like take us back a bit to your journey? Because I was reading up about, I was looking at your career's gone on for a very, very long time. I think that's just incredible. So do you want to take us back to the beginning? Like I was reading that your first encounter with an instrument was at 14 with a piano. So do you want to take us back to that moment with the piano when you was 14?
Right. Yes, I was, late starter. But I started taking a piano lesson, like you said, when I was 14. But it didn't last that long. I quit my lesson after 6 months or something. But I did pretty good. I finished all the music score, Bayer, Hanon, called Sony finger express exercises and stuff like that, in 6 months. But after I quit the piano lesson, I started learning classical guitar by myself, self-taught.
And what drew you to that classical guitar?
Basically, I always wanted to play a guitar also, But the reason why I started taking piano lesson, that could be, the basic for all music, whatever I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
So, but shortly after I, started learning classical guitar, I fell in love with the sound of the electric guitar. As soon as I heard the group called the Ventures or the Shadows, if you know who they are. So I started, I picked up the electric guitar and started playing.
And do you think, I was reading as well, that you was kind of, influenced as well by like American pop and swing music?
Uh-huh.
What was it about, especially that time growing up, that those genres appealed to you?
Well, I should tell you about, how I grew up, I guess, I got a significant musical influence, from the environment where I was born. I am so-called baby boomer. I was born right after the World War II. And the place where I was born was the U.S. military base called Camp Chigasaki in Kanagawa prefecture in Japan. And my parents were working at what they call the Sergeant Club, which is soldiers' relaxing and healing place where they can drink and dance after their duty. So I grew up listening to American pop and swing music all the time at that place. Yeah, I still remember soldiers, dancing to the song by Doris Day, Sentimental Journey and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I was deeply into that kind of American pop music, even after we moved to Tokyo. I mean, we were there for about 3 years, but we moved to Tokyo after 3 years. And I was still listening to American pop radio station, which is Forest Network, the American military radio. So I totally into that kind of music when I was so little. So, and then, I was able to sing all American pop and then top 40 songs by the time I got to the age of 10 or something. I was, different. I mean, in Japan.
Yeah. And I guess that's really had, I guess those moments have had a real impact on, the music you create now, I guess, because it fuses, like you said, traditional Japanese with, I guess, a lot of like traditional Western sounds, including jazz. So when you did start, making your own music, what was I guess the music that was inspiring you then when you first started, you know, creating your own compositions as a composer and producer?
That's a tough question in a way. But besides, you know, the music from United States or Europe, you know, like England, I always wanted to, you know, do something with the Japanese traditional music. But, you know, especially I would say World War II, you know, almost everything get too much, you know, influenced by Western culture. And Japanese people are, you know, going toward that way. Even at school, you know, we have a music lesson, you know, a music class or painting class or whatever. They didn't teach us any Japanese traditional music or traditional painting, you know, brush painting and stuff like that. Nothing at school. So, you know, everybody, almost all the kids, you know, got into Western cultures. But I always thinking, you know, that's kind of strange, you know. So
how did you, I guess, when, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, when did you start, I guess, to experiment with, you know, traditional Japanese music?
Actually, after I went to England. That sounds pretty strange, but I lived in London for about a year, 1970s or somewhere around there. And I formed the band, and we were playing sort of like British pop, you know, pop rock with the English musicians. And by looking at the members in my band, just simply, you know, they are not lying, you know, anything. They are what they are. You know, that's what they have been doing, you know, since they were born. But we Japanese have been trying to imitate, you know, those cultures from England or from United States. So I thought that was kind of strange, you know. And those experience, I mean, in England, you know, I had a great time and I enjoyed it so much. But I decided go back to Japan because I wanted to study Japanese traditional music and cultures from the beginning. I mean, you know, basically, you know, from the scratch, you know, because we didn't know anything. Like I said, you know, we were not taught, you know, Japanese stuff, you know, even at school.
So for someone like myself who might not, you know, be aware of traditional Japanese music, can you describe some of the qualities which make a song or are important to a traditional Japanese song?
That's a good question. It is very spiritual, you know, way to express yourself. I mean, it's almost like meditation or something. For instance, I play one of the Japanese stringed instruments called biwa. I play a koto. I don't know, you know, if you know what they are, but of course you have to study the technique of the instrument. But you know, before that, you have to know what the spiritual, you know, side in it. You have to start, in a way, it's almost like meditate before you start playing. You know, every time you grab your instrument, you have to sit there and, you know, even for a few seconds, I mean, you have to be in there, you know. You have to feel the background, spiritual background and the history and everything. Otherwise, you cannot hit the good sound. You cannot create the good sound.
So is it, I guess you mentioned two instruments there, and are they both string instruments, the two traditional instruments that you mentioned? Right. So I guess, are there any similarities between, you know, traditional Japanese music and traditional Western music? or are they very different sounds?
Well, they are different from each other. I mean,
Yeah.
But basically, like you said, what I was interested in, playing was a stringed instrument. So, well, there's a similarity, between, English or American string instrument and the Japanese instrument, the fingering.
The strings as well.
Yeah.
And I guess when you came back from the UK, and you went back to Japan, and that's when you started, to kind of back to, I guess, the traditional Japanese sound.
Right.
Did you, I guess, obviously you were still influenced by, American and UK music as well. So how did you, I guess, realize when something sonically didn't work together, if you was like blending the two?
Well, I was not trying to blend, intentionally. I little by little, my lifestyle is changing. As you study Japanese traditional things here and there. So naturally, the music I create is changing, along with the changing the lifestyle, It was very interesting, After I came back from England, I started taking a biwa lesson, the, the only instruments, I would say two instruments, piano and the biwa are the only instruments I studied by taking a lesson. Everything else I studied by myself,
Completely self-taught.
Yeah, self-taught, koto, I self-taught, everything.
And I guess like kind of now, and I was reading that in the 70s, you'd composed a lot of jingles for different adverts and stuff as well. Was that using a lot of, I guess, was that using traditional Japanese instruments for that, or was it using a lot Western instruments?
Are you talking about jingles for TV commercials?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, actually, I was doing that in order to be able to get out of Japan. I just wanted to make money,
Yeah. I like that. That's so honest. I guess something like that that allowed you, I guess, the freedom to create actual albums of music that you'd want to put out there, right?
But it was fun, writing all kinds of, variety of music, Some of the commercial, for instance, they say, oh, we need a music sounds like the Beach Boys. Why not, I am just enjoying writing music sound like Beach Boys,
I like that.
Yeah,
And I guess like...
Yeah, I enjoyed it so much for about 3 years.
Mm-hmm. And I guess ever since that you came back to Japan, and you've obviously been making your albums out there, and your own music, do you feel that there is a bit more of a shift of people from and composers from your generation kind of going back to more traditional Japanese sounds?
Not many musicians has done it.
Yeah.
They are, even nowadays, most of those musicians are still into Western kind of music, almost 100%. But they still have Japanese minds somewhere, I could tell that because what they call J-pop or whatever, it sounds different from American or English music. But that's not a traditional music.
Yeah. And I guess now at the kind of space you're at, what would you love your music to be used with if you was ever to kind of go back to when you're composing music? What would you want your music to be used for?
I like writing music for documentaries. I would say that might be my favorite, work.
Yeah. And how do you go about doing something like that? Are you very much like working off of a brief, or are you very much like, you said that you're kind of just taking inspiration from things around you?
It depends on the job. I mean, what kind of documentary or what kind of motion picture or whatever, but the way I write music is so natural. I mean, I always try not to do anything, I mean, intentionally. For instance, if I work on a documentary film, they give me the visual, I mean, for the first 5 minutes or whatever, and okay, just looking at the scene and for 5 minutes, and I can start hearing something. And if I don't hear anything, I don't do anything. I mean, just doing something else. And if I turn it on, the visual and looking at it, and if I hear something, if it's a 5 minutes video, I write it in 5 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's really quick.
Yes, I mean, that's how I write music. But of course, after 5 minutes, I arrange the music, I add something to it. This section needs shakuhachi, or this section needs strings, or whatever. I mean,
Sorry, what was that? You just said then. I didn't catch that.
what?
So just before you said strings, I didn't catch what you just said there.
Oh, did I? Oh, shakuhachi.
Yeah, could you explain what that is?
Yeah, shakuhachi is a bamboo flute, Japanese traditional instrument made out of bamboo.
Yeah, and I guess one thing I wanted to actually ask is, do you feel that certain instruments, especially traditional Japanese ones, they convey a different type of emotion? So you mentioned obviously the flute, and the different string instruments. Do they convey a different type of emotion, do you feel?
Yes, shakuhachi, the bamboo flute, Japanese bamboo flute has very special sound, or also the way they play. I mean, I don't play the flute, but it's also very spiritual, and especially shakuhachi can play, create this strong sound. If I say strong sound, I mean, even the biwa I play, it looks like a lute, Japanese traditional lute-like instrument called biwa, very percussive and sort of like expressing a battle scene, some samurai battle or whatever, and then,
I love that. I really do like that. Can you tell me a bit about your involvement with the Godzilla King of Monsters official soundtrack?
Godzilla?
Yeah.
I was not a composer, but one of my close friends, he's a great composer, Bear McCreary. He has scored many motion pictures and documentaries and stuff, and also the game music, And I've known him for, I don't know, 20 years or something. When he was young, maybe when he was 19 or 20, he called me up, out of the blue, and I want to learn Japanese traditional music. Can I come over to your studio? And he came over to my studio, and I showed him, how I played those instruments, koto, biwa, and stuff like that. And he was at the studio maybe about an hour or so, and he went home. And he has, at that time, I think he was scoring pretty popular program on TV. And he has written the music to that, Battlestar Galactica or something.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a spacey, space kind of.
Space series.
Yes. But in that genre, he loves Japanese traditional sounds. So he used the Japanese traditional stuff here and there in the spacey program. Mm-hmm. But he did great. I was so impressed, after he has written the score. And he spent only 1 hour at my studio, and he was so good. I was so impressed. And I told him, oh, you're going to be a very famous composer probably in 5 years in Hollywood. And I was right.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yes, and he and I have done so many projects together. I was always helping him,
So you said he was at your studio for about an hour. So is it really easy to pick up, the instruments, or do you need to still have like a natural, grasp for instrumentation to pick it up?
Yes, I showed him, how I play those instruments and what kind of scale or mode we use on each instrument. Of course, he was writing all the information in the paper. Mm-hmm. But I've done the same sort of, thing for other composers, American composers in the States, who was scoring major motion pictures, and I don't want to say names, but none of them did the good job. I mean, in terms of creating Japanese part.
Yeah.
And I said, this sounds like Chinese. It's totally different. But this guy, Bear McCreary, I mean, 100% Japanese.
How for someone like myself, I guess I don't have the ear to hear the difference between the really different sounds. Like you said it could sound like a Chinese, traditional Chinese. So could you explain, like, I guess what does make things sound traditional Japanese, and then I guess what's the criteria?
Well, I'm not saying, Chinese music is bad. I mean, I love Chinese music too. I love Korean music, Chinese music, Japanese music, any Asian,
Yeah.
But the scale is different.
Mm-hmm.
Japanese traditional music scale is, I don't know what to say. I mean, it's very graceful,
So those are the characteristics to look out for.
But it's in your blood. You can feel it, even though it's too much westernized in Japan nowadays. People can still say, "Oh, this is Japanese music. This is Chinese music," without even studying those. I mean, they could tell what they are. They can feel it.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to ask you about was I'm not sure if this is, obviously correct me if I'm wrong. Do you have a doctorate in music therapy?
It's like, same thing. I self-taught. I study. I love meditation and color therapy and sound therapy. So I combined color therapy and sound therapy, into one specific, my own therapy. Mm-hmm. So people are so impressed, and I call it music color therapy. I created the new word.
I like that. I really do like that. And I guess one thing I always wanted to ask is, obviously when you've had a career that kind of spans from, the 70s up until now, which is a very long time, how do you, I guess, still be original when you are making music? Because you must have so many different, influences constantly kind of going on. How do you, get new inspiration and stay original?
Well, that's a good question. But it's kind of hard to answer.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But studying or learning whatever you want to, all kinds of different genre, makes you original. I think that's how you are. Whatever you study, adding something special to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no. And I think a lot of it does come from, I guess, having a natural, I guess, ability to create music.
Right. The more you study, the more you have it in your brain,
Constantly.
Yes.
And
more your own drawers, you can open up your drawers, doors, or whatever. If someone say like for creating music for the Beach Boys or whatever, oh yeah, it's right there. Open up the one of the drawers,
and there it is. The drawers in your mind, it's just parked away.
Right.
And I guess as you look towards, the future, are there any, kind of new age, I guess, both Japanese or any sort of global artists that you're, you're inspired by and you like the sounds they're creating at the moment?
Right. New age music. Yes, that was 1970s or 80s, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
That's the audience or the music, the people who are in the music business always have to name whatever the music are. We musicians have been playing all kinds of music. I was playing new age kind of music even in the 60s, while I was rocking, the Beatles stuff and whatever. But besides that, when I'm at home, being just alone, very quiet, meditating stuff, there's a message, something.
Oh, I've just clicked off of it.
Okay. Where were you? I mean, where were we?
He's talking about, being able to, I guess, titles given to music have always a given, but you've always been making that music, essentially.
Yes, we were making very spiritual music even in the 60s. And in the 70s, people say, oh, that's new age music.
Yeah.
And we say, what does it mean? New age music? Whatever you call it, if you can sell it, go ahead.
And I guess, are there any genres or I guess sounds that are inspiring you now?
Well, I can go back. Way back to 1950s or whatever.
What about anything in 20 in the tens? I guess that's what we are in the 2020s or the 2000s, the millennium.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not into the music I hear on the radio or online.
Yeah.
Most of the time, and once in a while, of course, I look watch the TV program, and musicians and singers are doing most recent stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not impressed with those kind of stuff. But these days, I see some good singers.
Mm-hmm.
The young singers, like same as your name, Kamilla.
Camilla,
Cabello.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Camilla Cabello.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's a great singer.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that as well. Anna, could you want to tell me briefly about your East Quest Records as well?
Basically, it's just a small label online. I produce and release the music I like. It's a one-man record label. No pressure, no politics, no restrictions at all. And all the music on the label is either written or produced by myself. And people say, no matter what genre the music is, it becomes mine, bearing the distinct sound of my world. So I enjoy having my own label online and selling music through Amazon. It's nothing special, but most special to me.
Osamu, thank you very much for speaking with us today. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I had a good time with you. That's about it, I guess. If we have another time, another chance, to talk like this,
Yeah.
I'd be more than happy to do that.
Oh, amazing. I really enjoyed, I guess, finding out about the I guess the traditional Japanese sound, because that's something that I'm not very familiar with myself, and I just think it's very interesting, especially how you've really, you're self-taught in a lot of the instruments as well, which is incredible. And you've had a very long career, so appreciate speaking with you today. So thank you for tuning in to this Plugged In with the lovely Osamu. Please let us know in the comments what genres you'd like to learn more about next time. Thank you very much.